Most 70.3 triathletes are wasting many hours each week training for a race that they care deeply about, but still underperforming. Today's video, I'm going to help you try shave off 3, 4, maybe 5 hours per week and actually gain some speed. The big myth about more volume makes you faster, you're probably dead wrong. You've got a job, family, and a 70.3 goal that you care deeply about performing. So today, I'm going to break down some of the myths and also just give you some ideas on perhaps how you can regain some of your time back, but actually get faster. This is you're interested, you're in the right place. Thanks for listening. So first point, most triathletes I meet are fit, don't get me wrong, but they're very fragile. They're following a training plan and it doesn't work. Just a one size fits all training plan off the shelf. You end up doing quite a lot of zone 2 junk miles. What do I mean by that? It's just getting out for a bike ride. No structure, no strategy, just doing a lot of easy training. Now that, don't get me wrong, is required to actually build your engine aerobically, certainly in the early years and days and months. But when you are limited to 6 to 8 hours a week, which is probably the sweet spot most amateur triathletes, 70.3 triathletes hit per week with some other demands of life, like not compromising sleep, nutrition, recovery, and actually food preparation, you'll find that you just have to really get much smarter with how you structure your training and you get more specific. And that's what I want to highlight today, that it's not just about doing a lot more volume, because it's going to dig a hole, you're going to compromise sleep. You're all probably nodding that you squeeze that extra session in. You certainly push the nutrition to the side, and actually the fueling around the sessions is actually even more important than the session itself, and the adaptation is when you get fitter. So the training session itself does not make you better, the adaptation afterwards. So you're working hard all the time, but all that effort, but actually is it adding up to better gains, or you're just making yourself more fatigued? So you're arriving at the event overcooked, not fresh, and certainly fatigued, so your performance is below par. If you look at your week, Monday to Sunday, the first 6 to 8 hours, quite a nice linear plateau, a linear graph, should I say, and then potentially of improvements of stress on the body, and you tend to plateau around that 8-hour mark because of compromising recovery. And then the drop-off can be very hard and fast when you go past 8 hours a week. So if we think of a kind of a 3-3-3 model, 3 sessions for 3 sports, 3 hours per sport as a really good place to start. So your 3 swims, you basically get more done in 20% of the time for almost 80% better gains if you structure the session really specific. So the same goes with biking. We know we need a little bit more time on a bike, and the same with running. If you consistently hit those 3 sessions, we're going to limit injury as well. That's the area that you get exposed to injury so much more. And you tailor your week that hits these sessions as key fundamentals, non-negotiable, do not miss sessions, and everything else above that, your mobility and your strength, is designed to support the swim, bike, run, those 3 1-hour sessions for 3 sports. The next point I want to harp on about is there's also no point having this plan structure when you hit those sessions half dead. So energy is really low. So either too early in the morning, so compromising sleep, or actually fuel. And we've all been there, including myself, where you haven't fueled sessions quite right and you just get below par quality out of that session. That's what I'm talking about, that the average triathlete is actually not hitting the correct intensity. When you've got tons of volume, fantastic, you will improve. And we only get that every now and then in a week where we get a training camp and we might do 20 to 25 hours. That actually is quite degrading and doesn't really build too much in the grand scheme of things. It just messes up your consistency. But when you do 2, maybe 3 weeks of that, that's where you get the big gains. That's where professional athletes can obviously do a lot more volume and recover. So you got to start with your week specificity and your week planning and your structure. Not every week's the same because of travel and work. Start with the non-negotiables. Kids, family commitments. You've got to sacrifice some social elements, I'm afraid. To win somewhere, you've got to lose somewhere else. Your key sessions, you might have heard this before, those are the non-negotiables. Now, an easy run and an easy bike can drop away. They are supporting sessions. But if we go what are the key 3 swim sessions that we just mentioned in the previous point? Those need to be slotted in, non-negotiable. Now that could be tagged on to a bike session or tagged onto a run. That's also no problem. When are you the most tired? Generally people Thursday, Friday, they're quite fatigued from the week. But if you've got a gap on Wednesday morning, then potentially you only have to start at 10 a.m. or you can move your diary. Do your long run on a Wednesday, because actually doing a long run back to back after a long bike on a weekend, we just do that because that's when we traditionally have more time. But actually, if I can get a lot of my age groupers to do their long run in the middle of the week, so it gives me 2 lighter days, so then I hit them with some decent biking on the weekend, the improvements are quite linear from there. Generally speaking, you have maybe more time on a Saturday or a Sunday, weather dependent as well, kids' social, sport commitments, etc., and your partner. That's when you're going to get your 2-hour, 3-hour session in there with adequate recovery afterwards. If you feel dead by Friday, even if it's 30 minutes, I promise you that blood flow, that LT1, that first turn point, that real aerobic conditioning that makes up 80% of your training week should fit in there. It's still worth going out. It's not junk, it's blood flow, it's mindfulness, and it sets you up for the weekend. The next point. Intensity is your ally. Okay, it's only when it's really precisionally executed. Something I've mentioned before, if you just watch this now. Something I neglected in my 20s probably. I'm in my 40s now. I obviously brought it in. I thought I was doing intensity, but I wasn't doing it correctly. It's your ally, your bang for your buck. It's back to the point I made previously in another video around VO2 max and strength being one of our leading determinants of prevention of all-cause mortality. So high intensity is 3 to 5, sometimes up to 8 minutes of duration, no matter what sport you're doing, where it's in that intense domain, okay? So in a 3-zone model, it's zone 3. In a 7-zone model, it's above zone 5, if you're using training peaks. But it's obviously hard, out of breath. Most of us can only manage 2 to 3 minutes intervals, then you need equal rest. And of course, you can probably handle that for 3 to 5 repetitions. That should be in your program each week. If you're injured on the run, of course, don't do it on that. You can do it on the swim. The biking's probably your best bet. You can use a hill. Okay, so if you just in a group ride and you think that's going to be intense because you're surging off the front, this is the problem with these group rides on a Saturday. Everyone's got their ego in and you go to the front, you're holding that position, it starts to burn. That's the gray area. No one's really actually putting themselves on the line and doing 3, 4, 5 minutes repeatedly, very hard for properly above your threshold. So if you don't know what your threshold is, don't worry too much. You can watch some of my previous videos, but ultimately we all have a capacity where we can hold something for 45 minutes to 60 minutes. That's classed as your critical threshold or your FTP, different terminology. We test all our athletes. Now, sometimes you don't need a lab test, but we can do some field testing at home. On the turbo, on the road, we can do multiple different parameters to actually try and work out where your strengths and weaknesses lie. The key is to then spend enough time above that critical point to stimulate what we know is degrading from 35 years onwards, pretty much. So if you can keep that alive, use it or lose it, that analogy, that's going to be critical to your performance. So you can see you can only handle a few hours of that a week, not even up to 2 hours in total. 2 sessions a week probably across the sports. So you can see how you're fresher for those if you bring down your volume. If you're doing 12 hours a week, 14 hours a week of just kind of easy stuff, you're just getting slower and plateauing. You might feel you're getting fitter, and certainly that can help in the early months and years of your development of just doing some easy training. Of course, you've got to build up the volume and frequency first before you add intensity. Again, one of the crucial rules of training. Okay, so properly executed and periodized intensity is 100% in your right zones, your key ally in performing. You'll find you do less volume and actually get faster. Most important thing, recovery is actually training. Let's be blunt. I'm going to be straight up. If you're not recovering properly, and that's active recovering or actually sleeping, sleeping is your free best 100%, tools down, hands down. Every expert in the world agrees, and that's what we do really well. If you're terrible at sleeping, you need to address that first, because if you've ever trained late at night, you'll realize that you're probably nodding your head. If you swim late at night, your sleep is terrible. You do a hard intensity bike in the evening because that's the way your diary works. Unfortunately, you will sleep poorly, which isolated one-off, it's not going to really affect you. But if you repeatedly do that, you need to really try and work your diary better. From the athletes I coach, they really prioritize this recovery. Now that's feeding the machine, getting the timing of the meals right, the complex, there's no magic diet. It's complex macronutrition, so it's a variety around their training certain carbohydrates might increase their recovery or absorption because they're less fibrous, quick on the take. That had its place. Things like that, adequate protein intakes. But monitoring your wearables and your actual recovery through the night on a weekly basis is key. So your Whoop or your Aura data, that now is becoming more available for most of us, and people are actually aware of it, with tracking how the training is affecting you, and actually are you recovering on a 3-4 day scale, maybe even over 7 days. If you are still trending downwards and just don't feel yourself, you've got to back off. And that's about adjusting your training in real time. That's where a training plan doesn't take anything like that to account, or one of these AI plans. They work for 30-40% of the population. But if you're looking for true performance, certainly the athletes we coach and I coach, it's about adjusting in real time, because if you layer upon consistent sessions upon each other each day, sometimes double days, sometimes triple days, they just improve drastically, because the body loves that high frequency. They treat it as the fourth discipline. You've heard that being thrown around nutrition. Of course, that is 100% one of the most important things as well. The recovery equals adaptations, which means you get better. Okay, so really focus on, we're not trying to squeeze more sessions in. We've all been there. I'd rather you just go, you know what, I'm going to prioritize getting to bed 90 minutes earlier, or not necessarily that sleep in, because your body likes that consistent wake up time. Even if you are quite tired, or almost prioritize having a 20 to 40 minute nap later on that day. You can do it on the train on the way to work. Don't do it while driving. Even not later than 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. Even if you do take it out in your working day, you'll be so much more productive at work. People are frowning and going, how can I have a 20-minute nap? There are people that do it and have in the companies that allow that as well. But if you work from home, it's the most productive way. I often just duck off for 20 minutes, set my alarm, boom, and you feel revitalized. You start to go over 40 minutes, you start to play with your sleep cycles, and you actually wake up more groggy. Further on that point, skipping cool downs, skipping the warm-ups, that can add up over the week and again multiply. So really focus on why we do these things. Certainly the warm-up's actually really important. Extending a super long cool down is not actually that beneficial. You're worth just dropping that down. You just want to flush some of the lactate out. There's reasons why we do that. Depends on the intensity of the session. Fueling before, some sessions don't always require it. You don't want to overfuel for the sake of just fueling. But a lot of the sessions will require some carbohydrates. So it's understanding right time, right fuel, context of your fuel. So in summary, yeah, you can train 15 hours a week and still plateau, but you can actually train 8 hours of really focused, structured training for your physiology and actually still really get faster. I've seen it with other coaches and their athletes. They've dropped their volume down. I've seen it with some of my athletes. And when they're ready, we increase their volume if that's what we need to do. If they are still improving and their numbers are getting right on that formula, why would we change it? So giving you some food for thought to think about how you look at your week. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.